Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, LinkedIn. Welcome back to the Value First Data Series. I'm Casey and I'm here with my friend Clement. For the past few weeks, we've been talking about data before the hand raise, audience stage, researcher stage, all that anonymous browsing and self-service exploration. And honestly, you might not have a ton of data at those stages, which is actually okay. But today, we're talking about the moment everyone wants to talk about, when someone raises their hand and says, I want to buy from you. Now what? It should be simple, but here's what I see constantly. Teams can't recognize when it happens, or they recognize it but don't know what to do. Or they overcomplicate it with a 47-step qualification process. They might treat every hand raise exactly the same. So today we're going to build a hand raise recognition system live in HubSpot so you can see exactly how to do it yourself. Clement, what are you most excited to show people today?
Probably more what we're excited to learn, more than show. I'm super excited to just get our hands dirty in HubSpot, how things can be managed better, how to think about data supporting that hand raiser stage. Of course, excited to talk about our approaches, your approaches, but I think it will be super informative. If nothing else for myself, and I'm sure there are others about hitting their head against the wall around that topic, how to do it better. Super excited for today.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I feel like what I want to start with is the problem that I see that most teams have. I mentioned this in the LinkedIn post for this, but I think most people have a much harder time identifying hand raisers than they really should. And I think it tends to be because they can't distinguish the hand raisers from the researchers in the value path. If you have not watched the previous episodes, the first 3 steps of the value path, first is audience. That's anyone that engages with your brand at all. Maybe they land on your blog, maybe they see a social post, or maybe they're just like in what you would traditionally refer to as your target audience, but they're not in a purchasing cycle at that point. Then people move into a researcher role. That's when someone like myself goes, I would like to buy a software for streaming videos. And that's when I might start researching how much StreamYard cost, how much any of their competitors do, like Riverside. That's the one I was like there's a River one. I use StreamYard. But that's when you start to see like that researcher stage. And it may include competitors, or it may just be them researching your organization. But at many of those stages, sometimes, not all the time, we don't even know who the individual is. We don't have them cookied. We don't have their contact information. And I don't know if we should. Many times, I think organizations are trying desperately to get the contact information of those people in their audience, in their researchers. However, once you get to the hand raiser stage, that's when people are freely giving you their information and they're saying, I want to talk to you about purchasing. It's like the most valuable step. But people get so fixated on who the right audience is that I think sometimes they forget or they just lump hand raisers together with like sometimes the audience. Sometimes it's all people who they want to be buyers are lumped in with hand raisers and treated all the same.
Yeah, from what I see, and that goes back to the point I feel like keep making, is because the SaaS industry and in VC game where you're forced to have X MQLs and X leads created every month, you're just treating every form submission as a hand raiser more or less, which is not the case. And that's, I think, where the main confusion kind of happens, as you're treating everyone in, if audience is just someone somewhere, the researcher is definitely someone going through your website, maybe downloading some information, but not every PDF download or form submission, generic form submission, is necessarily a hand raiser. If someone is filling out a form to book a demo, yes, this is a hand raiser, but not every PDF that is gated for the email. And then back to the point we made last week is when people are in the researcher stage, they're less likely to fill out a form with their real contact data because they're not there yet. When they're at the hand raiser stage, they will put their relevant contact information, phone number, email, because they want to be contacted. They are hand raising. They're raising the hand to get in touch.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point too. And I already told you, we went over the agenda earlier, and I said, by section 3, we'll have veered off course. So I don't even think I'm making it through section 1, and I'm already veering. But but today's HubSpot Admin Hug was on deduplication. Our friend Jonas from Qualify was presenting on his deduplication tool that's built for HubSpot. I say all of that because when we talk about this and what you just said, makes me wonder, the rush to create contacts and to kind of assume that everyone's a hand raiser, even if they're not. How many duplicates is that creating in our CRM? I mean, how many times have I put in, I, like many people, have a junk email address where I put all my, I sign up for stuff there that I don't actually care about. But then if I'm ready to buy, I would put in probably my business email address because I want them to send the calendar invite there. I want my Fathom note taker to come. I want all of that there. So I wonder how many times I have duplicate contacts in systems just because of that, because they were trying to get me to fill out a form before I was really ready to fill out a form.
Yeah. In the portals, when we are asked to help with deduplication, this is often the case, and the realization of HubSpot admins. We know we have duplicates, but these are hard to spot because the email is different. Maybe the first name and last name is the same, but it could also not be the same because you can be whatever. When
many of my email addresses don't have my first and last name.
So there's no there's no magic. You can go from that fake email or junk email that you're using, and if you're not identifying as Casey Hawkins, there's no way someone can connect those two contacts being the same, or it's really hard. But in reality, if you could connect those two, you would have the right view of that person being audience researcher stage and now becoming a hand raiser, and you would definitely better understand that. That's why I think for any form on the website, it should be as simple as possible. So don't make it hard for someone to even think to provide wrong data or fake email by also asking some other questions which are totally irrelevant at that point. When you're about to when they're ready, they will provide you all the data that you need. But if you are collecting the junk emails, you're just losing the context about who is who.
Yeah. So what is a hand raiser? I am here because I do a lot of HubSpot lead scoring. I've spent the last year obsessing over lead scoring as HubSpot sunset their historic or their legacy scoring tool. I often say that identifying the hand raisers is the easiest part of lead scoring. And to be honest, it's the part ignore isn't quite the right way of phrasing it. But when I'm building a lead score, that's the last thing I kind of worry about, because I'm like, that is the demo form submissions, the pricing form submissions. But there are other ways people raise their hands as well. And then, Clement, you have a SaaS business. So what does a hand raiser look like in your organization?
Very rarely it's someone filling out a form on the website, or requesting a demo or booking a demo. When that happens, we really have a good conversation with them, because they're really, they're on the website and filling out the form. Hey, I wanted to have a demo. But more often it's on LinkedIn. It's through comments, through likes on different posts, or my comments on others' posts, and then people reaching out, or me sending out a DM. Hey, I saw your post about this and this topic. I'm really curious to learn more about that. And then we have a call. And it's hard to measure all the attribution of where it's coming, because you are present on LinkedIn on so many different ways. But this is definitely not something you could easily score through HubSpot scoring, because that LinkedIn activity is not scoreable in HubSpot. There was a point I wanted to make, but I lost my mind. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, so you have a SaaS business. I am a consultant. That's not SaaS. I have a consulting business. That's the word. And I have a small website, and I get a handful of form submissions. I didn't even have a website until this year, but now I have a website, and every once in a while I'll get a form submission from my website. But at least once a week, if not multiple times a week, I get a LinkedIn message saying, hey, do you have any openings? Hey, do you have any, I'd like to chat. For me, hand raisers are much more often in my DMs. We live on LinkedIn. Our audience lives on LinkedIn. So we're kind of lucky in that respect. But if your audience lives somewhere else, then, that's where, you may see those hand raisers. And they may be comments, they may be DMs. It just varies. But to your point too, there's not a way to attribute or track that inside of HubSpot all the time. You can do that with a form submission. But you can't do that necessarily with just like a DM.
A question to you: in lead scoring, can you score the LinkedIn messages that are synced to the activity timeline?
Sorry, I'm thinking. I haven't seen that as an option.
Okay. Just thinking how to score something that is unscorable.
Yeah. Well, but to that point, I don't think scoring's that important for hand raisers, because you are going to talk to all of your hand raisers, unless they're disqualified in some way, in which case they're just disqualified. But the prioritization of hand raisers, I've never seen an organization that had so many hand raisers they needed to prioritize those.
Yeah.
When I look at lead scoring, I'm looking at researchers primarily, and I'm primarily looking at who are our researchers, and who is our priority in that audience. So, and that's why from a lead scoring perspective, sometimes I do put hand raising behaviors into lead scores. But it's in here. I'll just go in and show you where I've done this already. to scoring.
And maybe not just to bring the loop in the conversation, where your audience is, this is where amplify part of the loop happening. And if your audience is on LinkedIn, don't think too much to try to push people to the website. Just be on LinkedIn, be where your audience is, share your voice there, be present there. LinkedIn DMs are perfect for a conversation starter. And you don't need them to fill out a form or book a demo through the website. It's fine if you just share a scheduling link in a DM, and that's a hand raiser. And as soon as they book a call, they're in your HubSpot.
Yeah. So how I traditionally treat hand raisers in my scoring model is I use an engagement score of 100, and I break that 100 into 3. High intent are my hand raisers. They get 60 points. Middle intent, medium intent. These are people that are most often going to be our Chris is traveling today, so he won't hear me butcher his value path, but like high influencer or high researchers is what I mean. Like hot researchers, people looking at your pricing page, things like that.
Almost hand raisers.
Almost hand raisers. And I'd give them 30 points. And then I have low intent, which I give 10 points. And these are people who are actively visiting our resource pages, have visited maybe our blog multiple times. They're like, my low intent is like almost researchers, and my middle intent is like almost hand raisers. And that's generally how I break things up. And the reason I do that is because low intent gets 10, medium intent gets 30. If you've maxed both of those out, you have a score of 40, which is never equal to 60. It's never equal to a hand raise. And I think that's the point that like I'm very passionate about, is like there's no amount of blog visits, there's no amount of resource downloads that's the same as a hand raiser. And that's part of why I put hand raisers into this calculation, because I want to say these people with 60 points are hand raisers. Those look different and are treated different than the people we would like to be a hand raiser. Those are the people we might want to send a DM to ourselves. What's missing from this right now is, the DMs that we were both mentioning. And one thing that I think is kind of interesting is, maybe we have meetings booked should also be in here. 60. And if you have your meeting types configured, you might even have like, oh, that didn't work. This one's not configured like that, but if you have a demo meeting type or something set up, you could even like get further along like that too. Because that's for me, if someone sends me a DM, I send them my meeting link. And I even personally, like I could even have like a hand raiser meeting link. I would call, you'd call it like initial consult meeting link or something like that. But that's almost your hand raiser meeting link. The trick there is kind of, they've actually raised their hand before they filled out that form, but I don't know if it really matters because if they don't book a meeting with you, like did they actually raise their hand if you lost them before they
were shy raising the hand. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think maybe this is kind of, is known, sure. And then this is kind of how I might identify my hand raisers in my CRM. And then personally, on top of this, I have, I have ICP company fit and ICP contact fit. ICP is ideal customer profile. So if I did need to prioritize my hand raisers, I would do that using my ideal customer fit profiles. So do they have the job titles that are good for me? My background is in marketing. So I would likely put marketing titles as like an ideal customer fit. And if I needed to prioritize my meetings, my hand raisers, I would likely prioritize people who had marketing backgrounds over someone that comes from like customer success, which I always say I dabble in the Service Hub, but I am definitely Marketing Hub is my home.
We have the same approach where we try to score high anyone who has kind of admin access to HubSpot, because those are the people who are responsible for data of all aspects. And then, often it's not HubSpot admin as a title or RevOps as a title, but it can be just de facto HubSpot admin. So it's not necessarily the job title keyword, but more of the persona. But people are happy, people are happy to answer those questions when you are, DMing with them. When you start the conversation, you can easily ask those kind of qualifying questions. On a form submission on our website, we have, do you use HubSpot? Yes, no. This is kind of, the disqualifying for us. If you want to talk to us, but you don't have a HubSpot, there's not much we can help you with or talk about, because we're really focused on HubSpot users. More importantly than any other aspect of how big is this company, what's your company name. I mean, if you want to be identified and get in touch, if you're actually hand raising, I will be able to figure out at what company you work with. So I think those kind of company name questions, they just shouldn't be in any of the forms. You're just asking me for something that you can figure out on your own. If not, tell me. I can help you with that. But if you get the right data, and then when people want to fill out the form, when they are truly hand raisers, they will leave enough information with their business email that you can figure out at what company they work at.
So you mentioned the loop before. I do want to make sure we kind of touch on that. So when we talk about the loop, HubSpot's loop is express, tailor, amplify, evolve. Sorry. So you mentioned this in passing, but can you elaborate on what the loop looks like at the hand raiser stage from your perspective or in your experience?
Yeah, so express is really talking about concrete problems, which are bottom of the funnel type of content, if you will, on LinkedIn, where you're explaining concrete challenges you help with. So you're expressing the pain points, talking about problems you're helping solving, all the case studies. This is kind of the type of content you should be thinking about if you want to address hand raisers. So it should be really the goal, for example, of a post where you want to address and talk to hand raisers. It's fine to have only 400 impressions. If you got one demo booked out of it, you nailed it. You did what you had to do. It was super specific that one person identified as, hey, I should talk with Clement about whatever the data challenge is. And you have a call, even if it's 200 impressions. If you got that one discussion, that's the goal met. The tailor is kind of signposting the content or blog posts. It's again, be clear for which persona that you target that is relevant, or maybe for which industry, so they can relate as much as possible. Around that, with one of our users, we were asked if we can help them figure out for professors they're approaching, what field of research they're doing. Are they in oncology or in neuroscience? Because if they're in oncology, they will resonate with a white paper or a scientific publication within oncology, and not so much in neuroscience, which from someone outside of that life sciences space can be okay, whatever, it's just a research on something. But the main disease specific research is someone in oncology, they don't care about something, even if it's super interesting in neuroscience, because it's such a different research. And we are helping them with understanding the field of research of people in their CRM, so they can approach them with super tailored case study or white paper, which is how I see how you can tailor. There's a lot of tools available to just catch the insights, where you can tailor the messaging to that persona or that industry, or that concrete person you're approaching. Amplify, be where your audience is.
So that's like what I was referring to before. And like, if your audience isn't going to fill out forms, that shouldn't be your primary way of. You shouldn't be sitting around waiting for your audience to fill out a form to be a hand raiser, if that's not what your audience is going to do.
Yeah. Especially with AI and omni-channel presence and whatnot, expect them to raise their hand where they see you. If you're strong on LinkedIn or on YouTube, just think how you can make it easy for them to raise their hand on LinkedIn or on YouTube. Not necessarily think how to drive them to the website to fill out the forms, and then you can have them and score them. And then the iterate, learn what kind of content is helping you convert people, what kind of let's say on LinkedIn, what kind of posts are driving not necessarily the engagement, but those people then reaching out to you in DMs. With the content approaching hand raisers, the goal is not to have 50,000 impressions on your LinkedIn post. That means the post is meant for different audience. Maybe the audience stage or the researcher stage. There are not 50,000 hand raisers out there, for sure. We should have them. But if you can, with one post you can identify one, perfect. I think you did your job as you should, and that's where you can kind of learn from what you're getting from those content pieces, wherever your audience is.
Yeah, I also think, like, when we look at the evolve piece there, people in this stage are going to have different degrees of like buying readiness. And when we look at personalizing, evolving, it's worth considering that. Like, at one point I was an intern for a small business. I oftentimes was doing the hand raising on behalf of my boss at the time. But that hand raise was really premature in a lot of ways, where my boss was not willing to talk to the sales rep at this point. He was just willing to send his intern to talk to them and get a pricing and get a feel. But that also, when you're evolving, you're also evolving your messaging, because what I as an intern needed at that time was very different than what if my boss had been talking to them and had been ready to buy. That conversation would have looked different and have been different. I think it kind of tailor and evolve can sometimes mix to. maybe mixed together isn't the right term, but like the way you evolve will kind of dictate the the tailoring of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I
don't know.
I think it does. Yeah. I mean, as I say, it is, for different personas, different thing matters. You know, a VP and then an intern, they're both in the same group, but when intern is hand raising, they're maybe looking for pricing, or maybe looking for timeline. How long will it take us to implement that? Is it 5 months or 5 years? Where the VP, when that person would raise a hand, it would be a totally different type of data they're looking for. And if you understand that, that's how you can deliver the tailored message to that persona.
Yeah. All right. So let me bring HubSpot back up for a minute. Because I do want to take just a minute to look at like, what do we do inside of HubSpot? We have I showed how I segment lead scoring in this setup, but what do we do from here? What do you do with a hand raiser? And I have this sales handoff workflow that I use. This is a demo portal, but the trigger here is like when they reach whatever score. In this case, my score is generally going to be 60, but it might be 50 depending on my resources. Our friend Riley Powell said one time to me that he thinks of leads, the whole point of lead scoring is to decide when to deploy resources. So depending on how many resources you have will vary when to deploy them and at what level to deploy them. And for me, from here, I have this setup, which is a great ICP fit, which means that they are my contact ICP fit, my company ICP fit, and their hand raiser. I know that because their score is 60 or greater. Again, the way I set up my scores, you can't reach 60 unless you have raised your hand. And then from there, I can send a different notification to my team maybe. I can assign that lead out. Maybe I have, I mentioned before when I was an intern, I could still raise my hand, but maybe I'm set to like the BDR team instead of the AEs or something like that. There's some sort of blend there that can certainly come into play.
And you would differently score that based on the ICP persona fit, I guess. So, a hand raiser is someone, requesting a demo with 60 plus points now. But because the job title is intern, it would be, ICP fit score at the persona level, contact level, way less. So it's not, really hot lead, but it's probably a lead for review, or, hey, double check or meet with them to understand how far they are in their decision process.
Exactly. So, yeah. So, and in that case, I would, meet with them maybe. I mean, it depends on the organization. It depends on the resources, whether or not we're meeting with them or whether or not we're like asking for more information at that point, and going from there. Just directing people here at the same time. But yeah, so that's why I think scoring can still have a place. However, at the end of the day, your hand raisers are going to get some sort of follow-up, and your hand raisers should. I mean, even if an intern is the one filling out your form, in my example, my boss was never going to fill out that form. If you wanted my boss to purchase from you, you still had to go through the intern. No matter how, silly that feels, maybe, you still have to do it.
Yeah. How are you encountering for, demo booked where demo book is now a trigger to immediately score for 60 points. It would kind of get here, but you already have a demo in place, so you probably want to. Would you have a different branch here? You don't need to create a task because demo is already booked.
Yeah. So an example I have for that is I talk about Superid a lot whenever I'm talking about like sales practices because I think they do a really good job. I have done demos with Superid. I have never filled out like a demo form on their website. They have identified me as a HubSpot consultant, a HubSpot admin. Like I am, every time I meet with Superid, I say, I am your ideal customer profile. I am like, there is a box and I get that I am in that box. Even sometimes, one time I met with one of their sales reps and I said to him, I said, I'm about to do your job for you because I'm going to say something. And I know that you are going to be like, this is like, we have the solution for the exact problem that you're having. But all of that to say, like, I never hit the hand raiser stage. So from that perspective, I would probably the point of this workflow is a sales handoff. There's no sales handoff if the meeting is booked. So I'd probably have an exclusion here. I would have a suppression list of contacts. I would either have recent meeting booked, or if you're using the lead object, I would like, does this person have an open lead open? An open lead open? An active lead open? In which case don't do all this craziness because if they're already set and where they are. However, you do, to your point, need to have some sort of process for identifying that. If we're using meeting type of demo, is there something else that's generating a lead from that so that we can track the progress from there? Or are there life cycle stages being updated? You do still have to come up with a system for that. And you're probably doing all of those things. So I would likely have, at the end of this like hot lead set, we probably want to edit life cycle state, edit record, life cycle stage, hand raiser, save. And those are for my like hot leads, my non-hand raisers. They're not hand raisers, so I'm not going to set them as hand raisers, but they're probably researchers based on the other criteria I've done. And then if my trigger here is you have to have at least 60 points. Is greater than or equal to 60, save. But everyone else is going to be a hand raiser. In this case, they're just not a hot hand raiser. So I do that. But I would need a separate workflow. When an event occurs, meeting booked. Yeah, I'd probably want to have like a meeting type field, but let's do meeting booked. And let's use like the form. Let's just say I had like my meeting link. This is the only meeting link I used for these like hand raisers in my DMs. Then I would want to make sure that these people are also
hand raiser stage. Yeah.
And then if I'm using the lead object, maybe I create a lead at that point too. You know, there's your own systems maybe doing some more from there.
That was insightful.
Yeah. But then from here, we can segment people into that group. We can see from where they became a hand raiser. I can see they booked a meeting. Then I can start collecting some data on where these people are coming from and what they're doing.
Do the analysis, yeah. But as soon as you can identify them, which is through those workflows, then you can start doing the analysis, where they're coming from, attribute to which channel, from where they raise their hand, through the meeting link. You can do that. If you have a separate booking link for hand raisers for LinkedIn DMs, that's how you know they came from LinkedIn DMs. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I know we only have a couple minutes left. Just want to go through a couple of mistakes that I think some people hit in the hand raiser role. The first mistake is I think that people think they don't have enough data or enough hand raisers. So you and I both shared from our own businesses, most hand raisers for us are not form fills. So I think when you're looking for the data on your hand raisers, you need to look a little bit bigger, a little more broadly. Hand raisers may be in other places, but are you tracking that? I mean, we just looked at that example, and I think very commonly people are only tracking hand raising from form submissions. They're not looking at those other ways. So you need to make sure that you have some way to identify the other places hand raisers might be living.
Yeah. And I think it's fine to not stress too much to really measure that. If the hand raise happened on LinkedIn, and if they booked a call, it's fine to measure it from now on, so that you do what you just showed through the workflow of book the meeting through that concrete meeting link. You will understand where it's coming from, and maybe it was 5 DMs before the meeting was booked, but it doesn't really matter. You understand where that lead is coming from.
Yeah. The second mistake I think people do is overqualification by adding friction and or making it very hard to hand raise. And you mentioned this, make it easy. Especially if the ask is a hand raise, you should make that form very easy. There's this concept in marketing, you always want to reduce friction on forms. That's a very common thing. The more form fields you have, the more likely people are to fill out your form. However, I have seen at organization that they will reduce all the form fields. They'll make it one form field. And then they sometimes start complaining that they're getting too many form submissions or unqualified form submissions. But that's often because if that's the case, that's because your hand raise isn't a hand raise. The most common instance I see of this is people will gate a demo of their software, like a 5-minute demo, just the overview video. They'll gate that, and then they'll get unqualified fake email addresses, things like that. So then they'll make that form really hard to fill out. They'll have it be 47 questions. You have to enter your social security number just to see their little 1-minute demo. But that's not the problem. The problem is that's not a hand raise. It's not that those leads are unqualified. It's that those leads are not interested in buying at that stage.
They need one more step to get to raising their hand. Yeah.
Let them watch the video, and then if they want to have a conversation, they'll give you the right information and they will get back to you. Things like that.
And I think that's where, the correct thinking and setup of lead scoring is super important and crucial. Let them, easily fill out a form. If you then do a proper lead scoring, you will score them accordingly. They're not hand raisers yet. So it's fine. Make it easy for them and comfortable. Let them be comfortable filling out a form with the right information, not the fake junk email. I'm fine leaving, maybe just an email to see a demo. But if you then ask me how many employees I have, what is my job title and whatnot, I'll just give up and just provide a random string to get to the demo.
Or I'll just go somewhere else to buy.
Yeah. Just don't stress too much, especially now. We are in a fast-paced world. Yeah, don't stress too much.
And then mistake number 3, treating all hand raisers the same. I gave the example of when I was an intern. If you had treated me like I was owning the business, you're probably going to waste some resources on your own time. But also, that wasn't going to land with me. All I needed in that moment was to get the pricing information so that I could pass it to my boss. So if you want that hand raise to move further into a sales conversation, that conversation looks different. And then you gave the example of like tailoring resources based on your audience. And your audience best, so you would know what resources are going to be the most relevant. And then my last mistake that I see is waiting for perfect qualifications. So only kind of looking for hand raisers that meet all of the criteria. This means this is going to be often related to the making it hard to raise your hand, because you're going to start asking people a ton of questions to make sure that they're qualified. But if someone says, hello, I would like to buy, unless there's like a big reason, I don't know why we're standing in their way.
Yeah. Just talk to them. If nothing else, you'll build a relationship. And with all the AI, we're going back to to peers. You ask your colleagues, they might not buy from you, but they might recommend you. Hey, I just watched. I attended a demo from this company. It's super interesting. We're just not there yet, but hey, you should check it out. And that person raising a hand will be way more qualified because they already trust you, of someone they trust and know recommending you to them.
Yeah. So have that conversation. Even if they don't seem qualified, they may have someone else. I totally agree. I see that all the time. Somebody came to me because you recommended them, and it was like we did barely had a sales conversation. It was just like, here is my contract, and they said, okay. Clement said I should hire you. That's it.
Okay.
All right. Any final thoughts?
That was super insightful. Thank you for joining me. I know Claude is not making this in you, trying to force to have Chris here.
Yeah, my Claude.
It was super good to have you.
My Claude outline kept adding places where Chris could join, but he's traveling today, so he's not joining. But I'm excited to be back next week. We'll be discussing the hero stage, where we are looking for internal champions. I think just like a little hint of what this could look like in practice. Back to my example of me being an intern, if I had a good conversation, me, the intern, had a good conversation with the sales rep that I spoke to during that first conversation, I might be like, hey, we should buy that software. And a lot of times all that is having like a good conversation, and also meeting me where I am. So I think we'll talk a little bit about identifying who that is, but also the importance of loop marketing in amplifying that and creating heroes.
Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right.
See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.